Hi everyone, welcome to Karan's Gyan. Today I'm gonna kick off with possible upcoming fintech IPOs. I feel three very big IPOs might come up in the recent years. That's gonna be InMobi, PineLabs, and possibly PhonePe. And if we see a blockbuster PhonePe IPO, we might see another blockbuster IPO that a lot of us might be waiting for. But before I reveal everything, let's just dig into the background. Well, background is there is a lot of opportunity for India with respect to fintech IPOs coming in. So what used to happen is these fintech companies used to start in India, then incorporate in countries like US or Singapore because it wants a strong customer base. I mean, sorry, investor base. And seeking for the strong investor base, they have to go where the money is, and this money is mostly found in Singapore and the US. However, India's stock market cap is now the fourth largest. It has surpassed Hong Kong and it is valued at $5.5 trillion. Several Indian companies domiciled in more business friendly countries such as Singapore are returning back. And I have a couple of examples. Two of these examples are the companies I'm already discussing. So let's move on. What's happening with Singapore is though there is a good investor base there, it has had a muted IPO market. So if I talk about 2023, there were only six IPOs raising $32 million. And this $32 million is not US dollars, but Singapore dollars. While to give a comparison, India had countless many IPOs raising more than $7.9 billion, about 200 times more. Moreover, despite muted IPO in Singapore, there was a recent SaaS listing in the US by Freshworks, again, a bright Indian unicorn. Uh, this company got listed at 42 50 pence a piece and is currently trading at 12 13 US dollars. So again, a failure right there. So this is making fintech companies look at India with a deeper consideration. But these fintech companies don't forget the failed performance of 197 communication, that is Paytm. And well, all of us know what really happened with Paytm. It was the biggest drop for a IPO of that size that came biggest drop after it got listed. Anyways, let's move on to InMobi. So InMobi, just to give you a bit of background, it is India's first unicorn. It was incorporated in Singapore again in 2009 to have a strong investor base. It is a VC-born unicorn. That means its valuation reached $1 billion because of the funding it got from a venture capital firm that was SoftBank in 2011. Uh, Now, InMobi is shifting its corporate base back to India by early 2025 so that it can start an IPO. This is one of the requirements of companies that want to raise money in India. And just to give you a bit background about InMobi competes with Meta and Alphabet for ad sales. It was seeking a valuation of 15 billion US dollars before COVID, and now expects to seek much lesser $10 billion valuation in mid to late 2025. Now the question is, why is it seeking a $10 billion valuation when it was seeking a $15 billion valuation in the US? Well, a lot of things have happened since then. That is a discussion that we'll have for some other video for some other time. But just so that you know, InMobi hasn't been doing as well as Meta and Alphabet and has been beaten a lot of times for ad sales. Also, the other reason is the sales have been stagnant for InMobi. So it has had sales of $268 million in financial year 2023, and it is flat or stagnant with respect to financial year 2022. Talking about second possible IPO, that is PineLabs. So PineLabs is an Asian digital payments provider. It is backed by Peak 15 partners and Mastercard. It serves more than 5 lakh merchants in Middle East and South Asia, provides solution for payments and other financial services. If I look at other customers that PineLabs has, it has enterprise customers like Sony, BMW, and Samsung. And it is looking to raise $1 billion in an IPO and is seeking a valuation of $6 billion. Apparently, it confidentially filed for an IPO with the US SEC, Securities Exchange Commission, in 2022, but didn't go forward with the listing. And surprisingly, PineLab is also moving its headquarters to India. Thus, PineLab IPO is possible. However, there is a problem here. So PineLab says that it may issue primary and secondary shares. So what is primary share? What is secondary share? Primary share is basically I, as a company, I come up with an IPO, I list shares that would basically be used to expand my company. I am listing shares so that I use those proceeds, use that capital to fund my business ideas, business plans, business ventures in the future. However, secondary shares are not shares that are explicitly created for an IPO, but these shares are basically shares held by promoters that they want to offload. So basically, when you're buying secondary shares, it means that you are basically buying a promoter's stake instead of an entirely new stake. So the money would go to promoter and not the company in the case of secondary shares. Also, just to test the waters, PineLab is a bit scared after seeing what happened with Paytm, Paytm listing. It would like to test the waters with the pre-IPO fundraising before any listing, because if pre-IPO fundraising is shows a lot of fireworks, shows a lot of interest, it can give confidence to retail investors when they go out looking to looking for the IPO of PineLabs. So again, we might see a pre-IPO fundraising round before PineLabs. And if you get any news regarding this, that means PineLabs IPO is starting to be in motion. Last but not the least, PhonePe. So PhonePe's IPO is very likely. You can see PhonePe's IPO in the next 2 to 3 years. However, it depends on a lot of things. Currently, PhonePe has a market share of 51%. And in 2021, it realized that it will take a while for Indian market to appreciate pre-profit listings at a high valuation. So what this line means is Indian investors don't really appreciate loss-making companies going for an IPO. And it sort of makes sense. But Indian investors sometimes fail to realize that, well, these loss-making companies might be loss-making now. And even if they have sky-high valuations, the reason for this valuation is tomorrow, in the next few years, it would grow at such a pace that its valuations would no longer be sky high and would basically be a profit making company. But why should an Indian investor invest in a loss making company with high valuation? I mean, we Indian investors are spoiled. Look at our stock market. We have so many options to buy from. We can buy cash rich companies, we can buy companies that pay dividend on a regular basis, we can find fairly valued companies that also have equally good prospects in the future. Why should the Indian market appreciate pre-profit listings at high valuation? Well, it is something that the Americans appreciate a lot, not the Indians, but it's something, it's food for thought for all of us. So talking about Paytm's $20 billion valuation with a $2 billion IPO, it failed miserably. So if PhonePe wants to come and seek a valuation of $50 billion, Indian investors would just lose their mind, and again, the IPO would be a big, big flop. So PhonePe is scared of coming up with an IPO, and it is actually waiting for either of these companies, InMobi or PineLabs IPO, to come first so that it can see how the market is reacting to a fintech's valuation, especially with respect to PineLabs. Now, another context we have to give you. So the context here is Walmart backs PhonePe and Flipkart. And currently, Walmart's market cap has crossed $500 billion, and they are cash rich. So they have no reason now to offload their stake in PhonePe or Flipkart, and they would like to keep these draws with them, turn them into giants in a future date, and then come up with an IPO. They're in no hurry. They are not in bankruptcy. They're not in insolvency. So they can wait and watch and they can see how the market plays. Now, once PhonePe has seen other fintechs list first, PhonePe IPO is highly likely in the next 2 years, 3 years, if market conditions have been right for the previous IPOs. And given the right scenarios, given the right scenarios, if things go very well with PhonePe's IPO as well, we might see a Flipkart's IPO. But again, coming back to point number two, it'll take a while for Indian market to appreciate pre-profit listings at a high valuation. And this is where the whole story comes down to. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I hope you guys have a really nice day. Cheers.